That economic cluster briefing that we heard from now, our reporter Liabo Setho is standing by. Liabo, good afternoon. Certainly a very anticipated briefing. It was put off until today and it was rather rushed through, but he did touch on a few very crucial issues from white monopoly capital to the wealth tax to radical economic transformation. But the big one, I suppose, is the land issue. And he said there that there are two views on land. It's either expropriation without compensation or speeding up the process.
That's correct, Natasha. The land issue was first on the list. Obviously, we all wanted to hear what had been agreed upon with regards to that, and of course, there are differing views when it comes to that. And Mr. Enoch Godongwane tells us that there's still some research that still needs to be done with regards to whether the act is looked up on or it is changed, or do we just go ahead and just expropriate land without compensation? Of course, that obviously having its own consequences. But of course, other important issues was the issue which I touched on earlier on at one, was the issue of the ownership of the Reserve Bank. He's saying that, you know, they spoke about whether the state needs to own that wholly or whether the current structure needs to persist as it is. But of course, because of the lack of the fact that we could not ask for clarification and ask for questions, we could not go deeper into this. But I will touch a couple of points that he did speak on. Also the establishment of a state-owned bank, when this process will be completed, but our sources tell us that this is a talk that is talked about, and members are talking about that it should be completed by the end of December this year. Of course, we needed to clarify that with Mr. Godongwane, which we still have not. The PIC mandate, that it must obviously prioritize supporting black-owned businesses. And I also alluded earlier on to the issue of the penalties for uncompetitive behavior. You'll note that the Competition Commission recently has been imposing a lot of, or rather putting a lot of attention on companies that have not been playing ball when it comes to mergers and acquisitions and also competitiveness, imposing 10% of annual turnover to all those companies that have not been playing ball. This seems to have been given a lot more attention in this particular commission. And of course, I believe the issue of illicit outflows is also had been touched on, which he did not mention, but I believe that has also been touched on, the illicit outflows, the tax outflows leaving South Africa. That has also been very important. This has been a commission that has been widely expected. It had been put off for 2 days now, and it was quite disappointing, I must say, that we could not immediately clarify a lot of things that we wanted to clarify. The issue of the mining charter was another important one, Natasha, because you remember that there has been a lot of misunderstandings between certain parties with regards to whether the recommendations that are in the mining charter with regards to the ownership, black ownership, whether it is sufficient. We know that the Chamber of Mines has already filed in court to say that they do not agree with that. Of course, that still needs to be thrashed out between all parties, but it's very, very interesting that that came up as an issue in this commission. They have told us that at the moment they're in a plenary session where President Jacob Zuma is expected to address the delegates as well as everyone that is in attendance. And after that, we have been promised that Mr. Godongwane will come back to where the press briefing was held. This is where he's expected to take the questions, which is where we will clarify all of these things that he's told us and get proper answers on exactly what he meant by certain things.
So much for that, our Liabo Setho, just giving us a brief overview of that highly anticipated ETC, or the Economic Transformation Commission at Nasrec. And as she says, they will get a chance to question Minister Godongwane on some of those issues, and we'll bring you that as soon as it gets underway. For now, let's take a short break.